The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage, casting gentle shadows across the wooden floors. William sat at his desk, staring at the official letter that had arrived just hours earlier. His hands trembled slightly as he read the words again, hoping somehow they would change, but they remained the same, cold and final. Kate found him there 20 minutes later, still holding the paper. She didn't need to ask what it contained. The look on her husband's face told her everything she needed to know. Their beloved mentor and friend, Sir David Henderson, had passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 87. Sir David had been more than just a royal advisor to them. He had been William's grandfather figure after losing his own, and Kate's gentle guide through the complex world of royal duties when she first joined the family. His wisdom had shaped their approach to public service, and his kindness had touched their hearts in ways that few people ever could. Kate moved silently across the room and placed her hand on William's shoulder. She felt the tension there, the weight of grief beginning to settle. They had known this day would come eventually. Sir David had been battling illness for months, though he had kept his struggles private, as was his way. Even in his final weeks, he had continued to offer counsel and support to the young couple he had grown to love, like his own grandchildren. The children were still asleep upstairs, unaware that someone very important to their family was no longer with them. George, Charlotte, and Louis had adored Sir David's visits. He always brought stories from his younger days and had a magical way of making history come alive for them. His tales of adventure and service had inspired their young minds and helped them understand the importance of duty and compassion. William finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. The funeral arrangements would need to be made, and they would need to coordinate with the palace. But more importantly, they would need to find a way to honor the man who had given them so much. Sir David had never sought recognition for his service. He had worked quietly behind the scenes, offering guidance and support without ever expecting anything in return. Kate remembered the first time she had met Sir David, shortly after her engagement to William was announced. She had been nervous and overwhelmed by the prospect of royal life. Sir David had taken her aside and spoken to her with such warmth and understanding. He had told her that being royal wasn't about being perfect, but about being genuine and caring for others. His words had given her the confidence she needed to embrace her new role. The phone began to ring, bringing them back to the present moment. It would be the palace wanting to discuss the arrangements and the official response. William looked at Kate and she nodded encouragingly. They would face this together as they always did. They would honor Sir David's memory in the way he would have wanted, with grace and dignity. As William reached for the phone, Kate made her way to the window. Outside, the gardens were in full bloom, just as Sir David had always loved them. He had often said that gardens represented hope and renewal, qualities that he believed were essential for anyone in public service. Today, looking at those vibrant flowers, Kate felt a small measure of comfort knowing that Sir David's influence would continue to bloom in their work and their lives. The conversation with the palace was brief but necessary. Arrangements were discussed, schedules were adjusted, and plans began to take shape. Through it all, William and Kate remained focused on one simple goal: ensuring that Sir David's farewell would reflect the extraordinary man he had been and the profound impact he had made on everyone who knew him. The news of Sir David's passing spread quickly through the palace corridors and beyond. By midday, messages of condolence were pouring in from around the world. World leaders, fellow royals, and ordinary citizens who had been touched by Sir David's work all wanted to express their sympathy and share their memories. Kate spent the afternoon reading through some of these messages with their private secretary. Each one painted a picture of a man who had quietly touched countless lives. There was a letter from a school headmaster, thanking Sir David for his support in establishing a scholarship program that had helped dozens of underprivileged children receive quality education. Another came from a war veteran who credited Sir David with helping him find housing and employment after returning from service. William, meanwhile, had retreated to Sir David's favorite spot in the palace gardens. It was a quiet bench tucked away behind the rose bushes where the old man had often sat to think and plan. William could almost see him there now, his weathered hands folded in his lap, his kind eyes twinkling with some bit of wisdom he was about to share. The memories came flooding back. William remembered the first time Sir David had brought him to this very spot, shortly after his mother's death. William had been angry and lost, struggling to understand his place in the world. Sir David had sat with him for hours, not offering empty platitudes or trying to fix everything, but simply being present. He had taught William that grief was not something to overcome quickly, but something to carry with honor and allow to shape him into a better person. When Kate joined him in the garden, she found William with his head in his hands. She sat beside him quietly, understanding that sometimes the most powerful support was simply being there. After several minutes, William began to speak about his fears. How could they possibly carry on without Sir David's guidance? How could they make the right decisions without his wisdom to lean on? Kate reminded him of something Sir David had often said, that the best teachers don't make their students dependent on them, but rather give them the tools to think and act wisely on their own. Over the years, Sir David had been preparing them for this moment, even though none of them had wanted to acknowledge it was coming. As the day progressed, they began to discuss how they wanted to honor Sir David's memory. The official funeral would be held at Westminster Abbey, befitting his years of service to the crown. But they also wanted something more personal, something that would celebrate the man himself rather than just his titles and achievements. They decided to organize a gathering at one of Sir David's favorite charities, a youth center in East London where he had volunteered regularly for over 2 decades. They would invite the people who had known him best, not the dignitaries and officials, but the young people he had mentored, the families he had helped, and the colleagues who had worked alongside him in his various charitable endeavors. The children returned from school that afternoon, and William and Kate knew they had to tell them about Sir David. They gathered in the family sitting room, the same place where Sir David had told them countless stories over the years. George, being the oldest, understood immediately what had happened. Charlotte asked if Sir David was with their grandmother Diana now, and Louis wanted to know if he could still visit Sir David's house. William and Kate answered their questions as honestly and gently as they could. They talked about how Sir David would live on in their memories, and in the good work he had inspired them to do. They promised the children that they would always remember his stories and try to be as kind and helpful as he had been. That evening, as they tucked the children into bed, Charlotte asked if they could plant some flowers for Sir David. She remembered how much he had loved the garden and thought he would like knowing that something beautiful was growing because people remembered him. William and Kate agreed immediately, touched by their daughter's thoughtful gesture. Later, as they sat together in their private sitting room, William and Kate reflected on the day. The grief was still fresh and sharp, but they also felt something else, a deep gratitude for having known such an extraordinary man. Sir David had given them so much more than advice and guidance. He had shown them what it meant to live a life of purpose and service, and he had loved them unconditionally through all their struggles and triumphs. The following morning brought the weight of funeral preparations. William and Kate found themselves at Clarence House, meeting with Sir David's family to discuss the arrangements. His daughter Margaret, a quiet woman in her 50s, had flown in from Scotland. His son James had arrived from Australia, where he worked as a doctor. Both carried their father's gentle manner and thoughtful way of speaking. Margaret shared stories that William and Kate had never heard before. She told them about her father's early years as a young civil servant, how he had met their mother at a charity dance in 1962, and how he had proposed to her in the very same garden where William had sat yesterday. She spoke of his private struggles and doubts, his moments of uncertainty about whether he was truly making a difference in the world. James added his own memories, describing how their father had taught him to play chess on rainy Sunday afternoons, always letting him win until James was old enough to earn his victories honestly. He talked about the letters Sir David had written to him during medical school, full of encouragement and practical wisdom about serving others. These intimate details painted a fuller picture of the man they had all loved. Sir David hadn't just been a royal advisor or a public servant. He had been a devoted husband, a loving father, and a man who had faced his own challenges with quiet courage. Learning about his human side made their loss feel both deeper and more meaningful. Kate found herself thinking about her own father during these conversations. She realized that Sir David had filled a unique role in their lives, bridging the gap between family and duty in a way that few people could. He had understood the pressures of royal life while never losing sight of their humanity. He had helped them raise their children with both dignity and normalcy. The practical arrangements were complex but important. Sir David had left detailed instructions about his funeral, preferring simplicity over grandeur. He wanted music from his local church choir rather than elaborate orchestral pieces. He had requested that donations be made to 3 specific charities rather than flowers being sent. Even in death, he was thinking of others. William suggested adding a special element to the service that would reflect Sir David's love of storytelling. They would invite several of the young people he had mentored over the years to share brief memories during the ceremony. This would give a voice to the countless individuals whose lives had been touched by his kindness and wisdom. The afternoon was spent reviewing Sir David's private papers and personal effects. His study was filled with decades of careful notes, correspondence with world leaders, and detailed plans for various charitable initiatives. But scattered among these official documents were more personal treasures: photographs of family gatherings, thank you cards from children he had helped, and a well-worn copy of his favorite book of poetry. Kate discovered a file labeled simply, William and Catherine. Inside were copies of all the advice he had given them over the years. Organized chronologically, there were notes about their wedding planning, suggestions for their early public engagements, and guidance for handling media attention. But there were also more personal observations: his pride in their parenting, his admiration for Kate's natural grace, and his confidence in William's growing leadership abilities. One particular letter caught their attention. It was dated just 3 months earlier and was addressed to both of them. In it, Sir David expressed his gratitude for allowing him to be part of their family's journey. He wrote about his confidence in their ability to carry forward the values they had learned together. Most importantly, he urged them never to lose sight of the joy and love that had brought them together in the first place. Reading this letter, William and Kate realized that Sir David had been preparing them for his absence without their knowing it. His recent conversations had focused more on their own instincts and decisions. He had been gradually stepping back, encouraging them to trust their own judgment while remaining available for support when needed. That evening, they visited the youth center in East London where they planned to hold the informal memorial gathering. The director, Maria Santos, had worked with Sir David for 15 years and knew him perhaps better than anyone outside his family. She showed them around the facility, pointing out the various programs and improvements that Sir David had helped establish. In the main activity room, there was a wall covered with photographs and artwork created by the young people who attended the center. Many of the pieces included messages of thanks to Sir David, drawn and written over the years. Some were from children who were now adults with families of their own, but who still remembered the man who had believed in them, when few others did. Maria shared her own story of how Sir David had found funding for her social work degree when she was a single mother struggling to make ends meet. She explained how he had never made her feel like a charity case, but rather like someone whose potential was worth investing in. Now she was giving back to the community in the same spirit that Sir David had shown her. The day of the funeral arrived with unexpected sunshine, as if nature itself wanted to honor Sir David's memory with warmth and light. Westminster Abbey filled with a remarkable gathering of people from all walks of life. Heads of state sat beside former students from the youth center. Cabinet ministers shared pews with elderly residents from the housing project Sir David had helped establish decades earlier. William and Kate arrived early, wanting to greet as many attendees as possible before the service began. They were struck by the diversity of the crowd and the genuine emotion on every face. A young woman approached Kate, introducing herself as Sarah, one of the first scholarship recipients from Sir David's education program. She was now a successful lawyer and had traveled from Manchester specifically to pay her respects. An elderly gentleman named Arthur shuffled up to William, his war medals gleaming on his chest. He explained how Sir David had helped him navigate the bureaucracy to receive proper medical care after returning from the Falklands conflict. Arthur's voice shook as he described how Sir David had visited him in the hospital every week during his recovery, never missing a single visit even when royal duties called. The service itself was beautiful in its simplicity. The Archbishop of Canterbury delivered a sermon that focused not on Sir David's titles or achievements, but on his character and the quiet way he had lived his faith through service to others. The church choir sang his favorite hymns, their voices echoing through the ancient stones with both mourning and celebration. When it came time for the personal tributes, Margaret spoke first about her father's devotion to family. She shared how he had read bedtime stories to her children via video call when work kept him away, and how he had never missed a birthday or important milestone despite his demanding schedule. Her words painted a picture of a man who had somehow managed to excel in his public duties while never shortchanging his personal relationships. Then Maria from the youth center took the podium. She spoke directly from her heart without notes, describing how Sir David had seen potential in people when they couldn't see it in themselves. She talked about his habit of asking not "what do you need?" but "what do you dream of becoming?" This subtle difference, she explained, had changed countless lives by focusing on possibilities rather than problems. The most powerful moment came when young Marcus, a 16-year-old from the youth center, stood to speak. His nervousness was obvious, but his sincerity was unmistakable. He described how Sir David had convinced him to stay in school when he was ready to drop out. He talked about the job interview skills Sir David had taught him, and the confidence he had gained from their conversations. Marcus ended by promising to help other young people the way Sir David had helped him. During the final hymn, Kate noticed William struggling to maintain his composure. She took his hand, feeling the tremor of his emotion. This was harder than either of them had expected. Sir David hadn't just been an advisor or mentor, he had been a constant presence in their lives for over 15 years. The thought of moving forward without his steady guidance felt overwhelming. After the service, they accompanied Sir David's family to the private burial at a small cemetery in the Cotswolds. The gravesite was beneath a magnificent oak tree, surrounded by wildflowers that bloomed naturally in the area. It was exactly the kind of peaceful, unpretentious place that Sir David would have chosen for himself. As the small group gathered around the grave, William found himself remembering the first time Sir David had brought him to this same village. It was where Sir David had grown up, and he had wanted William to understand the importance of remembering one's roots regardless of how far life might take you. The lesson had seemed abstract at the time, but now William understood its deeper meaning. The burial was private and quiet, attended only by immediate family and a few close friends. There were no cameras, no official protocol, just people who loved Sir David saying their final goodbyes. Kate was touched by the simplicity of it all, knowing that this was exactly how Sir David would have wanted it. On the drive back to London, William and Kate sat in comfortable silence, processing the day's emotions. They felt drained but also oddly peaceful. The service had been a fitting tribute to an extraordinary man, and seeing the impact he had made on so many lives was both inspiring and humbling. They realized that their grief was evolving into something else, a deep sense of responsibility to carry forward the values and lessons Sir David had taught them. They couldn't replace him, but they could honor his memory by continuing the work he had started and applying the wisdom he had shared with them. That evening, they returned to the youth center for the informal gathering they had organized. The atmosphere was completely different from the morning's solemn ceremony. Here, people shared funny stories, laughed about Sir David's quirks, and celebrated the joy he had brought into their lives. Children drew pictures of their favorite memories with him, while adults shared tales of his unexpected sense of humor and his talent for remembering everyone's birthday. 2 weeks after the funeral, life began to settle into a new rhythm, though Sir David's absence was felt in countless small moments throughout each day. William found himself reaching for his phone to call Sir David about an upcoming charity event, only to remember that the familiar voice would no longer answer. Kate discovered herself setting aside interesting news articles to share with him, a habit she had developed over years of their regular conversations. The children were processing their grief in their own ways. George had become more thoughtful and serious, often asking deep questions about death and memory that challenged his parents to find age-appropriate answers. Charlotte had started a small garden behind their cottage, planting the flowers she had promised for Sir David. Louis, being the youngest, seemed to understand less but often mentioned missing Sir David's stories during their bedtime routine. One afternoon, while sorting through some of Sir David's effects that his family had asked them to distribute to relevant charities, Kate found a sealed envelope with her name written on it in Sir David's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 6 months earlier, along with a small, worn leather journal. The letter explained that the journal contained Sir David's personal thoughts and observations about public service, gathered over 50 years of experience. He had written it specifically for Kate, knowing that she would face unique challenges as someone who had married into the royal family rather than being born into it. He wanted her to know that her outsider perspective was not a weakness but a tremendous strength. The journal was filled with insights that only someone of Sir David's experience could provide. There were practical tips about managing public appearances while staying true to oneself, advice about balancing family privacy with public duty, and philosophical reflections on finding meaning in ceremonial roles. But what touched Kate most deeply were his personal notes about her growth and development over the years. He had written about watching her natural empathy shine through during hospital visits, her instinctive ability to connect with children from all backgrounds, and her quiet strength during challenging moments. He described her as a bridge between the traditional monarchy and modern Britain, someone who could help the institution evolve while maintaining its core values. Reading these observations, Kate realized that Sir David had been documenting her journey not just for his own understanding, but as a gift to help her recognize her own capabilities. He had seen her potential long before she had fully recognized it herself, and he had spent years gently nurturing her confidence and skills. Meanwhile, William was dealing with his own discovery. In Sir David's office, he had found a file containing detailed succession plans for various royal duties and responsibilities. Sir David had been quietly preparing recommendations for how William's role should evolve over the coming years, taking into account both constitutional requirements and William's personal strengths and interests. The plans revealed the depth of Sir David's strategic thinking about the monarchy's future. He had identified emerging social issues that the royal family should address, suggested new approaches to traditional ceremonies, and outlined ways to modernize royal engagement with the Commonwealth nations. It was a comprehensive roadmap for the next phase of William's service. But beyond the practical planning, the documents revealed Sir David's profound confidence in William's abilities. He had written about William's natural leadership qualities, his genuine care for others, and his ability to connect with people across all social boundaries. Sir David had believed that William had the potential to be one of the most effective future monarchs in British history. Both William and Kate found themselves overwhelmed by these posthumous expressions of faith in their abilities. Sir David had seen their potential more clearly than they had seen it themselves, and he had spent years preparing them for responsibilities they hadn't fully understood they were ready to assume. They decided to share these discoveries with Sir David's family, feeling that Margaret and James deserved to know about their father's final projects and thoughts. The meeting took place at Margaret's home in Scotland, a cozy cottage filled with family photographs and mementos from Sir David's long career. Margaret was deeply moved to learn about her father's continued mentoring even after his death. She shared her own memories of how he had always believed in people's potential to grow and contribute to society. She remembered his saying that the best gift you can give someone is confidence in their own abilities, because that gift keeps giving long after you're gone. James added that their father had always been a teacher at heart, even within the family. He had never simply given them answers to problems, but instead had asked questions that helped them think through challenges and arrive at their own solutions. This approach had made them more independent and confident in their decision-making abilities. As they talked, William and Kate realized that Sir David's influence would continue to shape their lives and work for years to come. His letters and journals would serve as ongoing guidance during difficult decisions. His example would inspire their approach to service and leadership. Most importantly, his belief in their potential would give them courage during moments of doubt. The conversation also revealed how much Sir David had valued their friendship beyond his professional duties. Margaret mentioned how often her father had spoken about William and Kate during family gatherings, describing them not just as the people he served, but as the young couple he had grown to love like additional grandchildren. 3 months had passed since Sir David's funeral, and spring was giving way to early summer in the gardens of Kensington Palace. William and Kate found themselves in the same spot where they had first learned of his death, but now the grief had transformed into something more complex and meaningful. The sharp pain of loss had softened into a warm appreciation for the time they had shared with such an extraordinary man. They had established a new routine that honored Sir David's memory while allowing them to move forward. Every Sunday evening they gathered as a family to share stories about people who had helped them during the week, continuing Sir David's tradition of recognizing unsung heroes. The children had embraced this practice enthusiastically, often surprising their parents with their keen observations about kindness and service. Charlotte's garden had grown beautifully, with bright sunflowers and delicate roses creating a colorful memorial that brought joy rather than sadness. She had started keeping a small journal, recording which flowers bloomed when and what insects visited them, approaching the project with the same careful attention to detail that Sir David had brought to his work. George had become more involved in their charitable activities, asking thoughtful questions about the causes they supported, and showing genuine interest in understanding complex social issues. William recognized Sir David's influence in his son's developing sense of responsibility and his natural empathy for others. Even little Louis had been affected, though in ways that were perhaps harder to measure. He had developed a habit of asking, "What would Sir David think?" when facing minor decisions, showing that the old man's moral compass was already becoming part of his young conscience. The Sir David Henderson Foundation had been officially established, funded by donations received in his memory. William and Kate served as patrons, working closely with Maria from the youth center and several other people who had known Sir David well. The foundation's mission focused on education, mentorship, and supporting individuals who showed potential, but lacked resources or connections. The foundation's first major initiative was launching a scholarship program for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds who wanted to pursue careers in public service. The recipients would receive not just financial support, but also mentoring from experienced professionals who could guide their development and help them navigate their chosen fields. Kate had thrown herself into this project with particular passion, drawing on her own experience of entering an unfamiliar world and the guidance Sir David had provided during that transition. She wanted to ensure that other young people would have similar support systems as they pursued their dreams of service. William had focused on establishing connections between the foundation and various government departments, creating pathways for scholarship recipients to gain practical experience in policymaking, diplomacy, and public administration. He was determined that Sir David's legacy would include concrete opportunities for the next generation of public servants, their first major public engagement since Sir David's death had been challenging but ultimately meaningful. They had visited a school in Birmingham that had been struggling with funding cuts and declining enrollment. Instead of the usual formal walkabout, they had spent the entire day working alongside teachers and students, helping with lessons, joining sports activities, and eating lunch in the cafeteria. The visit had felt different from their previous engagements. They found themselves asking the kinds of probing questions Sir David would have asked, looking for underlying issues rather than just surface problems. They had left with a much deeper understanding of the challenges facing the education system and specific ideas about how they might help. In the weeks that followed, they had worked quietly behind the scenes to connect the school with additional resources and support networks. They had also used their platform to highlight the innovative programs the school was implementing, despite their challenges, bringing national attention to their efforts and inspiring similar initiatives elsewhere. This approach represented a shift in their working style, influenced by Sir David's example of focusing on substance over ceremony. They were spending more time on fewer engagements, but going deeper into each issue and following up more thoroughly on the connections they made. The changes in their approach had been noticed by the media and the public. There was a new gravitas to their work, a sense that they were maturing into more substantial roles. Commentary pieces praised their growing confidence and their ability to engage meaningfully with complex social issues. But the most significant change was internal. William and Kate felt more secure in their own judgment and more confident in their ability to make a positive difference. Sir David's belief in their potential had become their belief in themselves, and his guidance continued to influence their decisions even though his voice was no longer there to offer direct advice. On the anniversary of Sir David's death, they returned to the quiet bench in the palace gardens where William had grieved that first day. This time they brought the children with them, sharing stories about the man who had meant so much to their family. They talked about his kindness, his wisdom, and his unwavering commitment to helping others. As the sun set behind the trees, they felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. Sir David's death had been a profound loss, but his life had been an extraordinary gift. His influence would continue to shape their family and their work for generations to come, a living testament to the power of mentorship, compassion, and quiet service to others.